Ladies and gentlemen, let us move ahead to the next plenary session. We all love Microsoft. Microsoft has all the tools and services you need to develop and test enterprise and crowd-friendly applications for the desktop, web, and mobile devices, targeting any platform. Microsoft has solutions for unit testing, functional testing, mobile testing, through Visual Studio Team Foundation Server, Xamarin, and Azure, providing you end-to-end capabilities for your testing needs. TFS helps moving testing towards developing implementation, hence focusing on delivering high-quality software faster and more efficiently. Our next speaker for plenary session is someone who is a senior program manager on the Visual Studio Test and Lab Management team at Microsoft India R&D Private Limited. In this role, she is building tools for testers that help them ship high-quality software. Prior to this, she has contributed to the development of SQL Server Management Studio and Microsoft Office Forms Server. She is passionate about product design and customer satisfaction. She holds a bachelor's degree in engineering in computer science specialization and MS degree specialization in computer science. With a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Program Manager, Microsoft, Ms. Prachi Bora.
Hi, everyone. Give me just a moment to get set up here, and we'll get started. In the meantime, if you have not woken up from lunch yet, I would like to announce that we have goodies. In the spirit of boosting or brain boosters, we'll have quizzes as we go along the presentation. So keep your eyes and ears open. And Himanshu here will be helping me distribute the goodies for right answers. So while I get set up, if anybody can answer what you can use Visual Studio for what kind of testing? Anyone?
Yeah, maybe you can answer all the kinds of testing. What Prachi was looking for was what are the different kinds of testing you can do using the Visual Studio. So that is one of the right answers. But then you have many more things you can do. If you can just...
Yeah, I think we can do everything. Yeah, so we can use for unit testing to the till the performance testing. So that is functional, unit, and your performance.
Perfect. Give the goodie.
OK. Looks like we have our first Rahul Gandhi answer. Cool. So as my introduction said, I'm a senior product manager on the Visual Studio team. My team primarily focuses on testing tools and capabilities within Visual Studio and Visual Studio Team Services, as well as Team Foundation Server. My area of expertise is in automated testing tools as well as load testing. So while today's this session for the next 30 minutes will primarily focus on load testing using Visual Studio. At the Microsoft booth outside, we have demos and videos going on about all sorts of testing, be it manual testing with test case planning, execution, etc., exploratory testing, be it browser-based applications or be it thick client applications, unit testing, coded UI for functional tests, load testing, and continuous testing in the DevOps world with continuous integration and continuous deployment offerings that we have at TFS and Visual Studio Team Services. So please do stop by at the booth, because in this 30 minutes, I'll not have the time to cover everything that we offer. So with a quick show of hands, how many of you are actually familiar with anything in Visual Studio or Team Services to do with testing? OK, that's great to know. For those of you that don't know anything about it, I'm hoping you'll learn a lot. And even for those of you that have raised hands saying, yeah, we are aware, I'm hoping that with the recent enhancements that we've made, you will also have a bunch to take away. So my key objectives on what I want you to learn from this session today is first, be aware that Visual Studio and Visual Studio Team Services can help you do not only DevOps, but also all things testing. Second, the cloud-based load testing offering that we have in Visual Studio Team Services can help you do hyperscale load testing, and we'll go into what does hyperscale mean. We have also taken an open ALM approach. We are not restricting our tools to just the Microsoft technology stack. So if you are an organization that has hybrid set of tools and technologies, you're all open, or you're all welcome to our platform, even if you're using Java tools, for example. Right? When was the last time you heard about Microsoft doing Java? Yeah? So you name it, you name any tool, we are opening up ourselves and welcoming you with both arms. So please, let's get started. All right, so did anybody hear about the Flipkart big $1 billion sale failure? Yes? Okay, lots of you. Anybody know the reason why? Okay, they could not handle the load. What's your solution to that? Load testing, yes. Do we have so many of goodies to distribute? Okay, we'll ask a more tougher question going forward. So if you are Flipkart or any other company that aspires to be in a big $1 billion kind of business, you don't want to be in the news for the wrong reasons. Right? You want to make sure that your customers are satisfied, your business moves forward with your customers being happy and being able to take what they need from you. So let's see how you can use Visual Studio for doing massive scale load testing, hyperscale load testing, and let's get started. So I'm hoping that's the only slide I'll show you. I'm relying on the Wi-Fi gods. Just in case that fails, we'll fall back to the slides. But we'll go ahead with the demos. So here I have an instance of Visual Studio 2015 Enterprise. And when I do File New Project, under the test category, you can see a bunch of project templates light up. Coded UI test project is our functional automation capability. Unit test project, of course, for developer testing. And then web performance and load test project for load testing. So let's select that and go ahead. So as this project gets created, a bunch of things will be added for you by default. The first thing that you will pay attention to is a web test. A web test is nothing but a test that tests your web application. The difference in how this operates from a UI test is that this operates at the protocol layer. Right? So it enables you to generate massive loads, because if you are, for example, wanting to test with 1 million concurrent users, you cannot be doing that with 1 million machines. You have a limited set of infrastructure, or even if you're leveraging the cloud, you will probably have a few agents, and you will want to generate massive loads. So operating at the protocol layer just gives you that flexibility of issuing requests fast, as well as being able to generate massive loads. So writing this test is not hard at all. You can turn on the recorder, and it takes you to the browser with the recorder being on. Are people at the back able to see this? Yes? No? OK, I'm going to try and zoom in. Any better? OK. So let's take my fictitious website here that I've put up on Azure. It will come up, and basically what you want to do in a load test is to simulate the typical user scenarios, right? So for example, if you're an e-commerce application, typically you might see a couple of types of users coming to your application. Users that will come, browse around some products and leave the system, or users that come and actually go through a complete buying experience where they log in, add some items to the shopping cart, and then check out and leave. So as I browse to my website, sorry, the experience is going to be a little choppy here because of the magnifier, but let's see. So this is my website that allows me to create tickets, right? I'm tracking all my customers, and let's enter some data here. And as I go through the application experience, you can see on the left-hand side a bunch of data is getting recorded. And this is nothing but the traffic that's going from the browser all the way to the server. And you can use this to easily record your test. Oops. And I'll go ahead and say create. So this is my one user scenario where I'm creating tickets. I'm done recording, so I'll say stop. And this will take me back to Visual Studio. It will do some automatic processing of the data that we captured. And you can see that it's now going through, it's going through dynamic parameter detection phase, which is essential for stuff that changes from session to session. Like, for example, session data, session state, something that is specific to a user, or something that is time sensitive, which will change if you record the test at one particular time, but play it back at another time. Right? So it has already identified that there are some dynamic parameters, and I will be good to go. So then it shows me a full list of requests that got recorded, and this comprises my one user scenario. Switching over to another instance where I've already recorded some tests, I will quickly show you this web test. In this one, I use the same website, but I exercised a different scenario where I'm creating customer records instead of tickets. And you can see that my recording captured some first name, last name information related to the customer. Of course, if you're generating hundreds of thousands of users, you want each one to do a different data. So you can bind this to a data source. It could be database, CSV, XML file. If you have dynamic data coming from other sources, you can write plugins to capture, let's say, something coming from a web service and stuff like that as well. So once my data source is captured here, I can then bind this one to actually come from the data source. Then it's no longer going to use the data that was recorded, but actually pick up stuff from my data source and keep executing my tests. So this is as far as my user scenarios goes. How do I compose a load test out of this? Load test can be composed by saying, add a load test. And right off the bat, it asks you whether you want to be running the test on premises. If you have an infrastructure which can help you generate load, we have a test controller, test agent offering that you can use on premises to generate load, as well as for automated testing. But cloud-based infrastructure gives you cloud scale and elastic capacity at will. You only pay for what you use, tear down the infrastructure when you don't need it. All those benefits are there, right? So let's take a look at what that experience looks like. I'm already logged into my Visual Studio Team Services account. As I mentioned earlier, this is our hosted DevOps offering. Learn more about this at the booth. So I'm logged in. If I had multiple accounts associated with my identity, I could pick one of them. I can also choose to, excuse me, I can also choose to generate load from any data center around the world. My application could be experiencing traffic from various geographies, and I want to make sure that when I test it, I simulate the real world load as closely as possible. right? So I'm going to say my application is in East US, and I will generate load from there. For how long do I want to run the load test? Whether I want to bombard my test with a constant load or a gradually increasing load. Then I'm going to specify what my test distribution is. Like I mentioned, some users will come, browse around, leave the system. Some users will come, actually add some products to their shopping cart and then actually go through that transaction. I would have recorded multiple web tests to simulate all those scenarios. And I can also say what percentage distribution I want. Maybe 70 users out of 100 are actually just browsing around and leaving, while 30% are doing some transactions. So I can add as many tests as I may have. As you can see, this project has a bunch of tests. You can also pick a Selenium-based UI test if you wanted to do actual UI testing through your load test. That is also possible. So let's pick a couple of the web tests that I have here. And what kind of browsers do you want to simulate, and finish. Right, so my load test is ready. I have written no code so far. If I wanted to customize this beyond what we offer out of the box, Visual Studio is extremely extensible, so the entire extensibility ecosystem is at the fingertips. You can customize that for your needs. But really, for the usual scenarios, out of the box capability, zero code, you're good to go. Now I can trigger off a load test. And this will then contact my Visual Studio team services. It will automatically provision resources in Azure because I specified an Azure data center. Initialize my tests there, simulate the test, and simulate how many ever users I specified, and give me back the results. All integrated experience. This will actually go through the acquiring resources phase and then turn on the execution. In the meantime, let's take a look at a test that has finished. Some live charts similar to what I'm showing here will be available once the load test starts running. Some basic charts like what my average page time, response time, et cetera, looks like as my user load varies. Throughput of the application, throughput that you're able to generate, pages per second, requests per second, if you have any failures, all those kind of metrics. You can also use the application tab to monitor applications to correlate metrics. If you're using application insights, you can configure that to have an integrated report that informs you about how your application is performing while the load's getting generated. So that is some quick analysis that you can do while the test is in progress. For more detailed analysis and custom charts, you can download the report. I've already downloaded it here in the interest of time. So I'll just open it. And then it tells me more detailed information, like what are my top 5 slowest pages? What are my transactions looking like? What are the various metrics? I can pick request by request and go into details of what exactly happened, how many times were the pages executed, how many of them actually met a certain goal that I had set in terms of response time or things like that. I can pick charts, and literally hundreds of counters are available for you to actually add to these charts and customize this to your needs. You can also use Excel for comparison and trend analysis. How is your test behaving or your application behaving build over build, right? So if I run a load test against an application that has changed and I want to compare my load tests over a period of time, I can do that using Excel, and you can compare 2 load test reports, or you can do a trend analysis by picking multiple reports. We also have a companion experience in the web, and for quick sharing of results with your team, you can do that, and this will load up in the browser and my Visual Studio Team Services account. Similar experience to what you have in Visual Studio will then light up here. With that, I want to call your attention to the fact that what you're seeing right now is a massive, massive load test that we did recently. This was back in July, so just like a couple months ago. You can see our user load was 1 million users. Right? We are talking about concurrent 1 million users, 70K RPS. It's like 70,000 requests per second that were generated with 0 failures. And why am I showing you this? The reason is when customers reach out to us saying, hey, I want to do load testing for my application, and I have a certain requirement in terms of the user load that I'm expecting. The question that they ask us is your service capable of supporting such a load? Right? So not only are users interested in testing their own application, but they want confidence that our service can actually generate the kind of massive load that they are looking at. Right? So in order to assure our customers that that is possible, recently we did these tests and we've put out extensive documentation and guidelines on what are the various parameters that can affect the kind of throughput that you get, utilization you get, et cetera. So this is basically where the hyperscale comes into picture. 1 million is not something that's required by all people on a daily basis. But if you have holiday sales kind of things coming up, you can, of course, use this once in a while to do massive, massive load testing. The other aspect of hyperscale is also you may not be actually reaching a super high user load, which is your ultimate goal, but you may be ramping up really fast. Right? So it may not be a gradual load over a period of time, but let's say you've announced some sales and your website goes live, and suddenly you see this massive load come up for a short duration of time, and then that disappears. Right? So for both scenarios, can your service support massive, massive load? Or can your service also ramp up really quick to support my application's needs are some of the common questions that we get from our customers. And this case study was done specifically to prove that our service is capable of it. So that's, in a nutshell, what Visual Studio load testing is about. I want to draw your attention to a couple of other things. I talked about the Open ALM platform. Welcoming all technology stacks with open arms. We also support running Apache JMeter tests. Anybody knows Apache JMeter? Okay, cool. How much do you pay for it? Sorry? It's open source. So if you are not familiar with Visual Studio, for example, or you are already invested in open source tools like Apache JMeter, bring your assets. You get exactly the same experience. You will get the same kind of load that you can generate, the same ability to generate load from any Azure data center around the world, get this cool reporting in the browser, download results for offline analysis in JMeter if you want. All of that is possible. So I might have a load test open here. OK. All right, so this seems to be taking some time. OK, so I have a .jmx, which is a JMeter file that I ran here. I just ran this for a short duration of time to get some interesting results. And I get the same experience. It tells me what my top 5 slowest requests were. I get charts, diagnostics, et cetera. I can also download results for offline analysis. So other things you can do, quick load testing. You may be just starting off with load testing, and you probably don't need a whole end-to-end scenario, or you don't have performance engineers in your organization. You just want to do some quick load testing. You can do a URL-based test. Just test a single URL. Or if you wanted to do API testing, web API testing, use URL-based tests, or you can use web tests in Visual Studio, your choice. Right? So the interface is also available on web. Make a choice of the experience that you prefer, whether it is Visual Studio or browser, and come do your load testing. I think we're probably, do we have time? Anybody? Anybody tracking time? I have 5 more minutes? OK. So I had a couple more demos planned, but I'm not going to go through those because of shortage of time. But the other thing that people often ask us is, hey, my application lives behind the firewall. It could be because of some organizational constraints. For example, I'm a financial institution and I'm never going to deploy my application on the cloud. Can you test my application that lives behind the firewall? Or other scenario being, I'm adding this cool new feature to my application and I'm only going to turn it on during holiday sales, right? But I still want to test my application before it goes live. And in the meantime, it lives on premises or in a private network in Azure. What are your offering? What is your solution for testing such applications? So as I mentioned, when we saw the load test creation, we have a test controller, test agent that you can, of course, deploy on premises if you have the infrastructure. The other ability that we also have is to create custom deployments on Azure. We have put out some templates in the open source GitHub library, which has a bunch of Azure Quick Start templates. So you can create a VM rig and register that for your VSTS account. You can choose to deploy these rigs with static IPs and open up your firewall if that's what you desire and your company's policies are able, or it's acceptable to your company's policies. Second option is also to pick a template that can be deployed in a specific virtual network in Azure for testing private apps. So these load test rigs will be created in the same network as your application and will be able to reach the application even though it is private. So we'll skip through these demos. Please feel free to explore this. All of this is open source. You have the ability, you can search for cloud load testing on GitHub and you'll be able to reach these templates. Last but not the least, I also want to show you, we talked about DevOps Hub. So build and release hub in a Visual Studio Team Services or TFS if you're using the on-premises helps you do continuous integration, continuous deployment. And I'll just quickly show you, I have a release definition created here, which goes through multiple stages. I have a QA stage, my application that gets deployed to staging, and then finally it goes to production. And at every stage, I'm doing different kinds of testing. Right? So in my QA environment, I deploy my application, for example, to Azure, and I run my functional tests. Right? In staging, I deploy my application to staging server, and now my functional tests have already passed. I'm going to do a load test. So all these tasks are available in the pipeline for you to configure. So if you are doing automated CI, release management, continuous integration, continuous deployment, you can do not only unit testing, but also functional tests, UI tests, as well as load tests directly in your pipeline. You get a nice, cool integrated experience here to see your test results that directly tells you how many passed, how many failed, etc. And you can get code coverage analysis and lots of insights into how your application is behaving and how your tests are, how effective your tests are. We have a lot of improvements planned in the DevOps, continuous integration, continuous deployment area, particularly related to testing. I'm happy to chat with you after the session. So please come by and chat. With that, we are done. 5 minutes for questions. Yes.
Any questions? Yeah.
So, hello.
Hi.
So the first question is, can we do performance testing for web services in this tool?
Yes, you can do that for web services as well.
Okay.
In the web and load test project, the recording is available. The recording option is available for UI tests. You can also hand code these if you require, if you want them. The URL-based experience that I showed in the web, that can be used as well. We also have, you can write up your code if you want to test your APIs. web APIs and include them in your load test. So you have multiple options of testing web services, web APIs, etc.
Oh, so that coding has to be done in which language? Java, .NET?
This
We have an option for that, or how it is?
this will need to be .NET.
Okay.
The coding has to be in .NET. If you choose to use the declarative function, there's no coding required.
So the other question is related to the infrastructure testing. So what happens in real-time environment, we have GTM, then we have LTM, then we have further nodes which serve the actual request and response. So is there any way in this tool we can verify that one of the data center is not working, then the request is getting served from the other data center?
The load balancer kind of scenarios?
Right, right.
Sure. So typically what you want to do with your load balancer scenarios is to generate loads from multiple geographies, right? One could be that, or you want to generate load from multiple IPs to make sure that your load balancer does not show a sticky behavior. So that capability is available, right? You can specify I want multiple IPs so that my load balancer doesn't sort of keep directing the traffic to a particular web server, and you can do that. Sorry?
So that is doable, and we can verify that this request is getting served from this particular server.
That you will have to monitor your application.
Okay,
Right?
I mean
So
there is.
you will want to utilize. You will want to monitor the utilization of your application servers to make sure that requests are getting balanced appropriately.
Okay.
Right? We will not be able to say which server it hit because the request will actually just go to the load balancer. Right? What the load balancer does internally is something that we are agnostic to.
Okay, thanks.
I think that was a great question.
We can have a Microsoft Azure voucher for Ravi Prakash.
So just to want to understand, if this software supports the package software performance testing like SAP?
For functional testing?
No, for performance testing.
For performance testing. 80% of the scenarios that we see are geared towards the web. We do have customers that are trying this out for thick client applications and stuff like that. Given that this operates at the protocol layer, you will be able to do that. We don't have a recording experience, but you can always write code or do the declarative tests manually.
Oh, okay. So if it is not web-based, then we cannot. So that's the answer.
You won't have a recording experience. You'll have to write up the tests or do a declarative request by request as it appears here. Right? I can very quickly say, add a request, and my request can be added here. So you'll have to build your test.
Okay.
For the client applications.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, please.
This will be the last question,
Okay.
as we are really running with a hard stop. May I request team to also join? Please come.
Hello. I'm aware of recent acquisition of Xamarin by Microsoft. I just want to know how Xamarin test framework is leveraging the Microsoft features in using Visual Studio.
Sure. So Xamarin Xamarin has an integrated experience within Visual Studio. You can choose to create your automated tests for mobile devices either using Visual Studio, or Xamarin Test Studio also ships for other platforms like the Mac OS. You can choose to install the Xamarin Test Studio on other platforms as well. The continuous integration, continuous deployment experience that I showed you briefly, where you can do different types of tests, we have options to run Xamarin tests there as well. For people that are interested in knowing more about Xamarin, please stop by at the booth. We have full-fledged demos going there. I think you'll probably get a better perspective than what I can show here in just half a minute.
I have come across the integration with the TFS, Xamarin integration with TFS, but I could not come across integration with load testing. Do you have any insights on that?
I think we can take it offline.
Sure.
Please.
Yeah, sorry, we are short of time, so I'll cut short here, but I'm available. Please feel free to come chat with me. Yes. Give me just a moment. My email address is flashed here. If you guys are interested in reaching out to me after today, feel free to. Yes, please go ahead.
Prachi, you talked about load testing. Uh, Normally, the scenario is we do a load testing prior to the code moving to the production. And then we simultaneously, after the code is deployed, we do a load testing just post production.
Okay.
Does Microsoft Visual Studio have something automated where I do both the load testings, together kind of arrangement?
Yeah, so what I showed you, the cloud-based load testing is a hosted service. You can run many tests in parallel. What you are talking about is, hey, my application is going to go through stages. So I have deployed something to staging. I probably want to do a load test there. And then after I deploy it to production, I want to do a quick load test there as well. That is part of the continuous deployment pipeline. You can use the release management functionality to sort of say, this is what I need to do for my staging, or this is what I need to do for my QA or production or what have you. Right, so that is definitely possible. We can chat more offline. I can show you the demo if you required. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Prach. May I request Mr. Vinay Bed, Vice Convener, Stepin Forum, and co-founder, Verity Software, to please felicitate Ms. Prachi Bora.